Hi everyone, hope you're doing good. In today's video, I just want to talk about the basics of poker. And there is no reason for that other than I just love this game. It's just a brilliant game. It's interesting, it brings joy and excitement. Um, yeah, I just thought to myself that why not making a video about just the basics of this game. We start by mentioning the rules of this game and how the game is just progressing towards the end. And we give also some tips, some hints, some terminology maybe. We talk about them. But by no means this is just an opinion of an expert. It's just a freelancer, you know. I just love the game. And there are some basic terminology which, if we talk about it, this video might be helpful for the beginners. Okay, so we start off by poker basics. And specifically, we are going to talk about the Holdem. There are other variants as well, but this one is the one I like. And basically the rules are, so you will have a background. Actually, everybody will have a background. So, and the background consists of 5 cards. The first 3 cards are coming all at once. This is called the flop. The next card comes after these 3 cards, and this is called his turn. And the last card is the river. So I don't know why they named it like so, but this is basically the terminology. So flop, turn, river is just the consequence, not the consequence, it's just a series of events which are happening in sequence. So the rules are so suppose you are around at a table, like so. 4 people are playing at top and 4 people at bottom. In total, we have 8 players. The game goes clockwise, so in this direction it goes. So let me write it here. Clockwise, motion. And we have 3 things. One is dealer button, one is a small blind, and one is big blind. Suppose, so dealer button is just a rounded thing. Usually it's of color white, and we have the name D, let's say, written on top of it. And this guy goes clockwise, 1 by 1 after each hand is getting played, to make it fair to everyone that the dealer is basically moving in the game. So suppose that dealer is just here in the beginning. The person sitting next and in the left side of the dealer button will be the small blind, and the person to the left of this guy will be the big blind. And basically, suppose that our small blind is €1, then the big blind is always the double. So this will be €2. And the dealer in the beginning, so these values, they must play. So they must not play, but pay. So the people who are small blind, they have to pay. So I've written here €1, but this could be basically anything. So depends on whether you are playing cash games or you are playing with chips. So this can be, I don't know, one unit you may call it. And this will be like 2 units. Or double as the small blind. So these 2 players, they must pay this amount. So suppose this is like, it can be also 100 if you have chips. So chips are usually like, I don't know, 50, and then we have 100, then we have a 500 chips, and we have 1,000 chips, we have 5,000, we have 10,000, and we have 50,000, and we have 100,000. They can be completely different, but let's say one set of typical chips in a poker game can be these units like 50, 100, 500,000, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, and 100,000. So far we know that 8 players are sitting round in the table, just like that. We have a dealer, and this dealer button, after each hand which is getting played, it's going to move one by one to make it fair to everyone. So it goes like this. And the person who sits left to the dealer will be the small blind. They have to pay, let's say, half of the basic big blind, and the big blind must pay the full price of the big blind. And as the dealer moves, the small blind and big blind are also shifting to the left. So far this is how we situate stuff. So this is how the positioning looks like. But every person here will receive 2 cards from the dealer. So there will be always a dealer also sitting at the table. So the dealer gives like 2 cards to everyone, and they give it usually one by one. It's not 2 at once. So 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, just like that. And then you get, in the second round, you will get your second card. So you have then 2 cards. This is what you have. And there's going to be 5 cards also which the game might go in the phase that the 5 cards are also getting shown completely. So what's the aim? The aim is to, with the 2 cards at your hand and the 5 cards at the background, you basically need to make 5 best card combinations. What does that mean? It means that, so in total there will be 7 cards, 2 at your hand, 5 in the background. The background is shared between everyone, and your cards are completely personal. So you have 2 cards, 5 cards in the background, it will be 7 cards, but you need to select out of those 7 cards 5 cards only to make the best combination. What does it mean, the best combination? There are some poker hands. So you can search it also with poker hands. And let me in fact search it right now. Oh, this is Google. Poker hands. The term is searched so much that it is available in the results already. So you can see, for example, this one. So these are all the possible combinations with those 5 cards that I said. 2 at your hands, 5 in the background. If you can make one of these, for example, royal flush, straight flush, 4 of a kind, full house, flush, and etc. So we're going to write them here. So in terms of the strength, I start from bottom to top. Let's say we have high card. This is the least. So this is the weakest, you may call it. And we go towards the strongest. And then the next level is pair. So high card means that you have, for example, ace and, I don't know, 10. And the other person has, I don't know, 8 and 10 and basically all these 5 cards which are coming, you're not getting any pairs or any trilling or anything, then these two people, who is the winner? The person who has the high card between these two people. The game is decided with the high card when there is none of these combinations are coming. But the next level is pair. So let me delete these. Yeah. The next one is pair. Pair means that one of the cards that you are holding, for example, let's say again ace 10, and flop comes, I don't know, ace, deuce, and 4, for example. So now you have a pair. So this is pair. This is, let's say, stronger than a high card. Then we have two pair. Means, for example, ace 10, and suppose in turn it comes a 10. Now you basically have two pair because you are matching two of the background, right? Then we have trilling, or 3 of a kind. And this one is very dangerous because, yeah, just bear in mind that this 3 of a kind is really, really dangerous. When it happens, you're basically getting crushed because, you know, it's one of the hands which basically doesn't have, let's say, too much notification, or, you know, it comes basically out of the blue. It's very hard to imagine this hand. 3 of a kind means, for example, you're holding deuce deuce, and then we have deuce 3 and, I don't know, ace, for example. So now these 3 will be 3 of a kind. The next one is straight. So straight is a combination, the 5 cards are in consecutive order, like, I don't know, we can have like 9, 10, jack, queen, and king. So these 5 will make straight. And the suits can be also different. This can be spades, this can be clubs, this can be, I don't know, hearts, and so on. So the suits doesn't matter. In straight, you just need 5 consecutive numbers, like 9, 10, jack, king, queen, or queen, king. So this is the straight. After that, we have flush. Yeah. And flush is when 5 cards are having the same suit. For example, you have deuce, 10, ace, jack, and, I don't know, like 3. And all these 5 cards are in hearts. So this combination is a flush. So the combination which you are having with your, as I said, your hand plus the background, you need to remove 2 cards and make the best combination with this table that we are discussing right now. The next one is, which is stronger than a flush, is a straight. No, it's a full house. Let me write them first. So full house, then it should be quads, I guess. Then it should be, straight flush. And then we have royal flush. In total, there should be, I guess, 10. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we are on the right track. So full house means there will be 2 patterns of the same number and 3 with the same number, like 3 tens and 2 twos, this will make a full house. But any 2 and 3 combination, like Jack, Jack, and I don't know, Queen, 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 this is also a full house. Then we have quads. Quads, or they call it also 4 of a kind, if I'm not mistaken, right? It should be, yeah, 4 of a kind, the third in the ranking. Quads or 4 of a kind is when basically you have 4 of the same number or value, like 4 queens or 4 tens, 4 jacks, 4 aces, something like that. Then we have a straight flush. A straight flush is basically a combination of a straight and a flush. Like, for example, in the example we had, it was 9, 10, jack, queen, and king. Then we said it can be spades, I don't know, clubs and hearts. But in a straight flush, they are all of the same suit. So, for example, this is hearts, 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 and hearts. Then you are having a straight flush. And the next one is a royal flush. It's a specific kind of straight flush, which is only starting with 10, jack, queen, king, and ace. And they have to be all with the same suit. Same suit doesn't mean always have to be hearts, but they can be also clubs. You see? Only they have to be of the same suit. So let me delete also these. So this was, let's say, and we have royal flush here. I just write this as hertz or hearts. I always mix it up with the German variation. Okay, so these are these 10 hands, or these 10 combinations that you might have. And here is, so here up here was the weakest, and this is the strongest. And as you go this way, then the probability also drops drastically. So royal flush basically maybe in your lifetime happens once or twice. So royal flush, I'm joking, but the probability is really, really low to happen. And most of the time, I think in this range it would be fair to say that most of the times you are basically dealing with people who are playing on full house, flush, straight, 3 of a kind, pair, 2 pair, or high cards. Quads are also very rarely seen, but they can happen, for sure they can happen. Straight flush and royal flush are basically, as I said, they are really, really, really less probable to happen. Okay, so far we have talked about the rules. So as a recap, we said you're sitting in a round table. In this example, we have 8 people. We have dealer button, we have small blind, big blind, and the dealer will give each one of you 2 cards. And then here comes 3 cards all at once, which is called as flop. And then the next card is the turn, and then the next card is the river. And then you need to basically make the best 5 card combinations based on the list that we have seen with high, pair, 2 pair, 3 of a kind, straight flush, full house, and the 3 less probable ones, which are quads, straight, and royal flush, straight flush. Okay. In terms of action, the action which is happening before seeing the flop, action before seeing the flop. So this is very simple. They call it as preflop. As the name also suggests, it happens before seeing the flop. So before seeing the flop, how many actions you can make? You can, of course, fold. So this is one option. You can call. This is another option. You can raise. This is another option. And also you can re-raise in case if somebody already have raised. So these are all the actions which you can make actually pre-flop. So suppose that these, I don't know, 8 players, which we have. Okay, now it's 8. So suppose this guy has, I don't know, pocket ace, this guy has ace king, and this guy has pocket jacks. And the action starts, for example, from here. Let's say, I don't know. Suppose that this guy is the dealer, this guy is the small blind, this one is the big blind. And it doesn't matter. These people are having, let's say, bad hands. And the action comes like, so he paid big blind. He, for example, I don't know, he folds his hand, and the guy with aces will put, for example, I don't know, 500, or let's say, make it realistically with the chips that we were saying here. I don't know, the guy can make like, depending on oh, also I forgot to say that they will start with a bet. Sorry, they will start with a big blind of, for example, in the beginning, like 100, no, let's say 200 and small blind of 100. And for example, every, I don't know, 15 minutes or every 10 minutes or so, based on, I don't know how they handle the situation, they will increase the blinds. So the game is also getting very, very interesting as time passes, because in the beginning, there's not so much excitement because the blinds are really, really small, like 100 and 200. When you have the stack size of 150,000, then basically 100 and 200 are nothing. But as the game progresses, like after, let's say, the initial 2 hours or 2.5 hours, 3 hours, then the blinds are getting high and high. So for example, the next 15 minutes, the small blind will be like 200 and the big blind will be 400. And this goes on and on up until, for example, you have like 20,000 for the small blind, and for the big blind you will have like 40,000. So now you understand basically time also plays a role. Time also plays a role in poker because the blinds are getting higher and higher as the time progresses. But coming back to our example, so we said the guy with aces, for example, raises if the blinds are, I don't know, for example, the blinds are 400, 800, something like that, and the guy raises to 5,000. The guy with ace king, for example, he can fold, he can call, he can raise, or he can, in this case, he can re-raise now, because he raised it to 5,000. He can say call by paying 5,000, or he can re-raise by making, for example, a 10,000 bet, like twice as this one. And the guy with jacks either needs to decide either he wants to, for example, call 10,000 or he shoves all in. And shoving is also another terminology. Shoving is basically when you say all in. So when you put all your chips in the table, that is basically shoving. For example, this guy with the jacks, he might think that he has the best hand and he puts all his chips to the table, and then this is called as shoving. Okay, so the basic terminology, I mean, we go on the fly. I have no specific plan. I just wanted to start from somewhere and then we build our knowledge little by little. So we've learned also about shoving. What else we can say? Um, okay, let's talk about the basic, um, let's say, building blocks that you have to know basically if you want to play poker, um, not even casually, but for sure when you are playing professional poker, you have to know this. But anyway, you have to know these two concepts. And the first concept is pot odds, and another concept is equity. Um, let's start with pot odds because maybe it's simpler to explain. Suppose that we have a pot of 10 of any unit. It can be 10 euros, $10, or it can be 10 in terms of, I don't know, chips. And this person 10 puts 10, puts 10, and you are sitting here. You're wondering whether you need to call, you need to raise, or you need to, I don't know, fold, or any action you need to make. So if 10 already is in the pot, and this guy bets 10, this guy calls, and the action comes to you, then you know already that if you call, you need to pay 10. But you already know that the pot was 10, but these values are also getting into the pot. So 3 tens and a 10 here, it will be 40. But usually in let's say, the normal terminology, they will write it vice versa and also with double colon, with double dot or a colon. So they call it as 40 to 10 or 4 to 1 as pot odds. Whoops. Pot odds. So what does it mean? It means that basically, so here is the reward and here is your risk, right? You need to pay 1, and if your luck comes around, then you will, let's say, pack 4 in return. So how much is in terms of percentage? In terms of percentage, it will be 20%, right? Because 4 plus 1, it will be 5 in total, and 1 over 5, it will be 20%. So this is the pot odds. This is how you calculate the pot odds. Why pot odds are important? For example, when you are playing heads up with a guy, again 10 is here, he bets 20, and you are asked whether you want to call or not. Basically, now, okay, let's make the pot also 20, and the guy bets also 20. So this means 40 is already in the pot, and you need to call 20. And if you make it easier, it will be 2 to 1, right? So always have in mind that the pot size bet will have the ratio of 2 to 1. And 2 to 1 means basically 33%, because 2 plus 1 will be 3, and 1 over 3 will be 33%. So this is the pot odds that you will have. If they bet half pot, like suppose this is 20 in the pot, and the guy bets 10, and you are asked to for the action, then so the pot is 30, and you need to call 10, then this will be 3 to 1, and this means basically 25%, because again 3 plus 1 will be 4, and 1 over 4 is 25%. Okay, and there's also another table if you want, but basically these two I think are the most practical ones. You need to always know those two, and the rest doesn't matter at all. because you need to make things simple for yourself when you're sitting in a table. There are billions of cards throwing at you, then you need to make your mind completely empty. If you want to make crazy computations and calculations, then this is then that will be a research, not a poker game. But basically, you need to know that the full pot size bet will be 2-1 or 33%, and a half pot size bet will make it 3-1 or 25%. So if, for example, the guy makes like 60% or 70%, then you don't need to calculate this in terms of pot size, I mean. Because you already know that the half will be 25 and the full will be 33. So 60 and 70% for sure will lie somewhere in between 33 and 25. So that's why I'm telling you that you don't need to basically have everything in your mind, or being able to calculate everything exactly over the table. You only need to have these two numbers in your mind: 25% for a half pot size bet and 33% pot odd for full pot size bet. Right? So this is basically pot odds. And okay, your decision making process, if you want to write it on a piece of paper, is usually you need to call when your equity is greater or equal than the pot odds. We haven't talked about equity yet, but we already know what the pot odds is, right? And we also know that we need to bear in mind this 25% and 33% for the full pot size and half pot size. But what is equity? Equity is, to make it simple, is basically when the amount of cards, let's say, it's very hard maybe to put it in words, but I try to explain it. The amount of outs you need basically to reach the best hand. That is equity. And some people are distinguishing between equity and also improving your hand. So some people think that equity is always only the number of outs that basically makes the best of the hands with respect to the background cards and so on. But some people also consider it with improving a hand. So for example, you might have a pair and you are thinking whether you can make, I don't know, 2 pair, or you can make, I don't know, maybe 3 of a kind even, or things of that nature. But for example, in a hand where there is flush draw, straight draw, and so on, having a pair or 2 pair basically doesn't matter, because you can improve your hands from 1 pair to 2 pairs, but when there is possibilities of a straight or flush and so on, then basically you have no chance, improving your hands is something, but having the basically the best hand is the equity. But anyways, you can consider it as the number of outs. And there is let me tell you, there's a 4-2 rule, multiplied by 2, or number of outs multiplied by 4. This is an estimation. This is not exact. This is estimation of the probability of hitting your desired card when you want to see only one card. See only one card. And this one is again an estimation when you want to basically see two cards. Whoops. When you want to pay basically to see two cards. But the actual probability you can calculate it yourself. But again, as I said, when you are sitting over a table, 10 people are playing, you basically have no time to one by one at each hand go and basically calculate every exact possibilities and probabilities, because it is completely time consuming and it's crazy. But you need a rule of thumb, or basically some fast rule basically to give you the answer immediately. So you can see this 4-2 rule is very handy rule. So we can have an example to make it easier to understand. Suppose you have diamonds, 2 diamonds, it can be 2 and 5. And there is another guy, he has no diamonds or whatsoever. There's another guy and he has also no diamonds. And suppose that flop comes a diamond, and a clop. These numbers are completely irrelevant for this example, but you sense that you have 4 diamonds, and if it comes one more diamond, then you will get your flush. So now we want to calculate the actual probability in this case. So there are 4 diamonds, and in total, let me erase this one. So there are 13 diamonds in total, ace through king. And 4 diamonds are already there, so 2 are in the background and 2 are in your hand. So then there will be only 9 diamonds. So in general, you call this as 9 outs. So there are turn, cards of turn and river, waiting there to be basically be revealed based on the actions that the people are making there. But basically now you are having 9 outs. And 9 outs, for example, in this, so these 2, they did not come yet. So 2 cards are here, 2 cards are here, 2 cards are here, and 3 cards are in the background. So in total we have 6 here and 3 here are 9. So 9 cards are already basically either in the background or in the hand of the players. And in a deck we have 52 cards. This is 4 suits and 13 basically values, 52 cards. And 52 minus 9 will be 43. And the possibility or the probability will be 9 out of 43 for you to hit a flush in the next card or in the turn. And 9 over 43, we need a calculator. Let me give you the exact value. Just a second. 9 divided by 43. Okay, this will be 209 something. So this basically means approximately 21%. And when you compare this 21% with this rule that we said, so we have 9 outs multiplied by 2 will give us 18%. So see these two values? They're pretty close. So that's what I'm saying. When you're sitting over a table with other players, you don't have to actually calculate everything exactly, but you need some rules of thumb to basically consider your chances. So this 4-2 rule is a very handy rule to basically calculate your equities on the fly as you're progressing. So the normal routine is when you are having equity greater or equal to the pot odds. So this should be the direction of your decision making. Right? So far we've talked about everything in a straightforward manner, or we talked about rules, and these are, let's say, the rules of the game. The rules of the game. But you know that with bare rules, you have no chance against the strong players. So here comes some other elements which are really important. So we talk also a little bit about position. This came into my mind right now. Position is also, let's go to our example with 8 players. Suppose that this guy is the dealer, and this guy is a small blind, this guy is big blind, and the first guy who needs to decide to take an action, which we said that we have only the action of folding. So this is preflop. Folding, or basically raising, or calling, or re-raise in case if somebody has already raised. But the first person to decide, this will be the first person to decide. In terms of position, it's a very, very bad position. It's a very bad position. And normally, these people, the general, again, I'm talking about the general trends. Because these 3 people, for example, are the first people to decide whether they want to fold, they want to raise, they want to call, they want to re-raise, or they want to bet or so. Tight play. So usually when you are playing as a small blind, big blind, or the person next to that, so here is out of position, they call it. So out of position basically means they have no authority, because there are other people which they will decide. So for example, if they in a round after the flop comes, then the action starts from the small blind, and the guy check, and check, but this guy and this guy are the last persons to bet. So these people have more freedom. So these are in position. So these are in position. So now we've learned also another terminology. So out of position, out of position is here. The people who are very close to the dealer, and in position are the people who have authority to make their decisions after everybody has said already something. So these people are getting the maximum amount of information. So in position, they get maximum amount of information, because everybody before them, they already have taken some action. Either they have checked, they have folded, or they have bet. So they have maximum amount of information. And the general, so here the tight play basically means you need to play very reasonable. Very reasonable. I mean, you need to only play when you are having very good chances, or suppose if it's pre-flop, it means that you need to have a range of hands like, I don't know, aces, kings, ace king, ace jack, jack king, jack queen, something like that. This is a tight play. And when the flop comes, based on what you see on the flop, basically tight play means that if you have nuts in your hands, again, nuts is another terminology. Nuts is basically the best hand. So nuts is the best hand. But tight play means when you are having nuts, then you need to play. And the people who are in position, they can have a little bit of flexibility or freedom. They can play a little bit loose. At least this is the general trend. Why? And they usually exploit it. The people who are in position, they usually exploit their position. Because suppose in this fictitious example we had a small blind, big blind, and then here check, here check, here check, here check, and this guy also check. The guy on the dealer button, he for sure can have some flexibility to start to bet. Yeah? He can put some chips here so that make these people to at least fold some hands. So he has authority here, in other words. In simple words, he has authority. So position is also another important element of poker. And also notice that the position might also change. Suppose that these, I don't know, this, okay, let me draw it again because that got really, really messy. I just want to give another example. This guy was the dealer, this guy small blind, this is my big blind, and he calls, and this guy also calls. Then we see the flop. Then this guy needs to start, this guy needs to start. Actually, this guy also needs to call before we go there, so he has to pay the big blind if he wants to play. Then we see the flop, so here is the flop. Then this guy is the first person to react, or to act actually, not to react. Then the guy checks, so let me say C or check, 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 check. And this guy now has flexibility to basically put, I don't know, let's say 1,000. So we talked about position, and this guy initially had a very good position. Why? Because he sees already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people actions before he decides what he wants to do. So he has a fairly good position, not the best position, but a fairly good position. And position is also relative. So suppose that if in the first round, after seeing the flop, the dealer puts 1,000, then this guy folds, this guy folds, this guy also folds, this guy folds, and this guy folds. Now, all of a sudden, the first guy after the dealer will be this guy. So he will go from a good position into a bad position. Because he will be, for the turn and the river, he will be the first person to talk. You see? So the position is also relative. Another important aspect of the game is, all I'm trying to say is basically another important aspect of poker is also position. And there's also range. Okay, in poker, another important concept and aspect, maybe these are not discussed typically when you want to teach poker, but there is huge amount of psychology in poker. Huge amount of psychology. and information. I would say information is really, really important um, in playing poker. So when you are playing in a round table, you don't need to, not that you don't need to, but that if you know these rules that we already talked about and try to play completely reasonable poker, you have no chance whatsoever to win anything. Because there is a huge amount of personality, psychology, and information passing on. And you need to, when you are sitting, for example, here, you need to gather information about all the people who are sitting at your table. Because it is not only based on mathematics and probabilities that you need to make your decisions, but also depending on the personality of the people. For example, some people are really tight players. These are real world, let's say, examples. You may see, for example, if this guy is a tight player, this means if pre-flop he raises like 2-bet or he makes a 3-bet or whatsoever, when he makes this action pre-flop, if you have the information that he is a tight player, then you can basically for 100% you can say either he has aces or he has ace king or he has ace jack or ace queen, something in that range, or other very strong hands. So you see, basically reading people's or gathering the information about the personality of every player, you basically will have huge amount of information or read in terms of your decision making. You need to gather this information when you are sitting at a table, right? So this is all I'm trying to say. So psychology is another aspect. I would say patience is very, very important. Very, very important. Because poker, you cannot say it's a completely strategic game. It is a combination of strategic games, it is a combination of skills, it is also a combination of luck as well. So it's a mixture of luck, strategy, skills, whatever you want to call it. But anyways, luck is another, I will write it in all capitals. Luck is also part of poker. This you need to bear it in your mind. And since luck is part of the game, then you need to have patience. Because there is a term called as tilting. So tilting is you have, I will give you a very nice example of tilting. And tilting is really, really lethal because it can kick you out. And okay, before tilting, I will tell you that you can play poker in tournaments. So tournaments. And you can play it also in, I don't know, cash games or other sorts of games which they have buy-in. So you can lose at the table and then you can rebuy again. So you can rebuy. But in tournaments, there is no option. So if you are kicked out, you are kicked out. So here, if you are kicked out, then you are kicked out. There is no possibility of, whoops. Okay. There's no possibility of rebuy in tournaments. So now let me tell you a very good example of tilting. So tilting, suppose you have aces. Oh, this example, just something else came to my mind now, which I need to explain it. But suppose now you have aces and you play with some people, and there is also a pot here, and this guy has 7 and I don't know 9, and this guy has, I don't know, 2 and 10, something like that. and you lose your aces to a flop which is, I don't know, it can be any sort of things like 2, 2, and I don't know, 5, and then comes a jack, and then comes, um, I don't know, something else. But basically, this guy with deuce and 10, he made a trilling or 3 of a kind, and your aces are cracked. Another terminology is cracking aces. Cracking aces. Cracking aces basically means that you have lost your aces to a weaker hand, like 2 and 10, deuce and 10. This is cracking aces. And now this guy who had aces, he's so pissed off that he thinks that with aces, if he cannot win with aces, then the next round when he wants to play, he raises with bad hands or shitty hands, and then again he loses another pot, and then he suddenly even shoves. Some people are completely out of their minds when they lose 2 hands. Then the third hand they will shove with really bad cards. They will shove it anyway, because we have this tilting effect. This tilting effect. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, that patience and keeping your nerves cool. I will write it here. Keep your nerves cool. This is very, very important. Never decide based on emotions or whatsoever. When you win hands, do not get too excited, or when you lose hands, do not get too pissed off or too rejected to basically do some crazy stuff in the next hands. So this is another effect. Another thing which came to my mind is normally when you have good cards like, I don't know, ace king, or it can be ace queen, or it can be aces, or whatsoever, any combination of these, it is important to raise. Bear that in mind. If you have aces and you don't raise, basically every people who are sitting at the table with every bad hand that they have, like in the example that we had here with deuce and 10, if you do not raise, if you are sitting here with aces and you do not raise, then everyone will basically call in the end, and based on the flop, your aces might get cracked very, very easily. So bear that in mind, that every decision that you make at the table is a piece of information or a signal to your opponents. So when you have aces, you have to raise. That's a must. I mean, that's a must, really, that's a must. You have to raise. Otherwise, you will basically create chances for the people with really bad hands to try to beat you based on the flop, turn, and the river. And believe me, this happens in real situations quite often. The people who are basically beginners, they slow play aces and they lose it. There is also a concept of slow play or tricking your opponent. But man, this is not your level. I mean, if you are at the beginner or intermediate level, slow playing is not your thing, basically. Do not think about slow playing or tricking your opponent to make traps for him and then lose your, let's say, precious high cards like aces, ace king, and so on. So the general trend is when you have aces or high cards like ace queen, ace king, and so on, you have to raise, because some people must fold. Some people must fold. Otherwise, any, let's say, combination of shitty cards might be able to crack your high cards. This is also another tip which came to my mind. Let me think about. Oh, then there is another situation. Okay. There is another situation that you can exploit. As I said, the general trend should be when you have aces, you need to raise. But that's the normal trend, right? You can exploit this fact and have Jack and 9, for example, in your hand. Or you can have, I don't know, 7, 8. You can have 5, 10, or any cards. And then you raise. So when you raise, you are giving the signal that I have a strong hand. Have that in mind. So as I said, every decision that you're making at the table is basically a piece of information and a signal to your opponents. So if you raise preflop with Jack 9, 7, 8, and so on, you are giving the signal that you are having basically a strong hand. And you can exploit this fact to trick your opponents. This is another thing. Another tip is, I will write it like chaotic play. Or we can also make this term, because I like fluid mechanics as well, or fluid dynamics, the turbulent play, I would call it. Turbulent play. You know that turbulent flows are very good at mixing. So you need to be also like turbulent flows. You need to always mix your play. Do not give a single-sided personality, because if you play always with ace, king, aces, jacks, queens, and so on, then you represent yourself as a tight player. Then all of a sudden when you raise, then everybody knows that what ranges of hands you might have. So always make mistakes, intentional mistakes. Raise when you are having not good hands, or make stupid calls and so on, only to basically make it completely turbulent and mixed. Because nobody is allowed to have a read on you. Give no definite read to your opponents. This is basically, let's say, a strategy hint. What have I written here? I don't know. Strategy hint, I meant. So that's a strategy hint. So always play chaotically, in a chaotic manner. Because once I know how you play, once I know your logic of play, then basically I can predict you. So avoid making yourself predictable. This is another cool, let's say, trick or strategy that I can share with you. Do not be predictable. That's basically super important. What else can we say? Oh, we haven't talked about bluffs. We have also another term as semi-bluff. Semi-bluff is a condition that you basically are runner on a draw. For example, you have, I don't know, straight draw, or you have a flush draw, and you try to play aggressive. Another term. So these terms are coming one by one. And as I said, I haven't planned for this video. I just started from scratch and tried to find my way through to just give these explanations. And I have completely no idea what comes next. But I just wanted to make this video. Anyways, so semi-bluff is a condition that the person has, for example, a straight draw, or they might have also flush draw, and they try to play aggressively. So aggressive play is basically what? Aggressive play is they are trying to raise, either bet high, or when the guy bets, they want to raise, re-raise or so. And they are doing a semi-bluff because if their bluff catches, so for example, if they are waiting like 9, I don't know, 7, 10, jack, if they hit an 8 somewhere, then they will have the best hand. For example, this is a fictitious scenario, for example, but they start to play very aggressively. So that's called a semi-bluff. Pure bluff, this is also, I would say, advanced level. This is advanced level. You cannot just make pure bluff out of the blue. There are conditions, there are situations, and normally this happens when basically there are different options possible. For example, for example, suppose a flop which has a possibility of a straight, or has a possibility of flush, or has a possibility of, I don't know, full house. Man, these pots are brilliant. I would say brilliant for bluffing. But I would say it's a fairly advanced topic. But bear in mind that it happens in cases when there are billions of possibilities, like straight flush, full house, or other sorts of strong hands which you can try to represent based on the bet sizes, based on the actions that you are making at the table. You try to force people to basically understand this message. So what the cards that you are holding at your hands, you have 2 cards holding at your hands, they have no value. They have 0 value. This is very important to understand. They have 0 value, and the reason is, so what contains the value is the message. The message is the value. Only the message. Only the message is the value. In simple words, the people who are sitting at the table, they cannot see your cards. You understand? But based on your decisions, how you treat these 2 cards, they will get the idea what cards you might have. So then that is basically the core idea, that the message is more important than the cards that you are holding in your hand. This is also another important topic. And aggression, oh, there is another, um, okay, another, let's say, beginner fault or another beginner error, or let's say, I don't know what to call it, but something which happens quite often with beginners. It's like they consider a fictitious scenario like this. Suppose that this guy is a beginner and he has, for example, I don't know, ace king, and he bets, for example, 5,000. Some people will fold and some people will call, right, like that. And then here comes the flop, like deuce and I don't know, jack and 8, something like that. And the first one is in diamonds, and this one is a spades, and this one is, I don't know, again a diamond maybe. And the guy sees the flop and he sees he doesn't match any of these, and the next round he checks. He checks. So there is a concept of continuation bet. Continuation bet. You are basically forced, if I may to tell you so, you are basically forced to make a continuation bet. Don't do it like this. You bet something really high and then when the flop comes you just simply check. No, you have to always make a continuation bet to gather information from your opponents, of course, from your opponents, to gather information. You have to make a continuation bet so that you see how other people are standing against you. This is super important. And so we thought of this from the view of a beginner, but there is also another perspective that, for example, there is a raiser sitting at a table. This is another tip that basically you should always have in mind when you are playing. For example, these people are sitting here. So that was one perspective. So this is one perspective, and this is another perspective. Suppose somebody here tries to raise, or he bets, doesn't matter. And then some people will fold, some people will call. Then the flop comes, and then he makes by default. So let's say he's a good player. By default, he makes what? A continuation bet. And you're sitting here and you're wondering what you need to do. Do not fold immediately when you have good chances. Do not fold immediately, because we do have this concept of continuation bet. So the first bet after seeing the flop is basically might be just by default a continuation bet. So you might have, based on the cards that you have and based on the draws that you have, based on your draws, do not fold immediately, because this action comes with a continuation bet. So if he raises, or if he or she raises, then basically you have to expect to have another bet when you see the flop, because the action raiser normally, not 100% of the times, but normally they try to basically enforce their position by having a continuation bet. So do not fold immediately. This is another thing that I wanted to tell you. So there are, I don't know how much time I spent. I need to see the recording, but I think it's enough for now. We have talked about many different aspects, and we didn't talk uh, with a certain schedule or with a certain program. I just talked about poker basics in a completely random and turbulent manner, as we called it also before. I hope this video helps at least the beginners. And I'm not sure whether I want to continue this series to produce some videos related to poker. But if I do so, I would not also surprise myself because I do love this game. And there might be also some future videos depending on the concepts or but basically we try to cover um, some key elements or the key, let's say, fundamentals of this beautiful game. And but by no means I'm saying that this is a complete let's say coverage of the things that are basically available. There are books written on poker as well, so just bear that in mind that there is a huge amount of information available, and what we discussed today was just a droplet in an ocean. Yeah, I hope it helps, and see you in the next session, hopefully, if I continue.